everybody, I'm Danny Grossman, and thanks for joining us for ILTV's weekly program, One-on-One with Alan Dershowitz. We want to give you, our viewers, the chance to have your questions answered by Professor Dershowitz, one of America's greatest legal minds. He's a leading expert on criminal and constitutional law, civil liberties, and the Arab-Israeli conflict. Hi, Professor Dershowitz, and thanks for joining us.
Hi.
So we are truly delighted to have, as today's special guest, a dear friend of mine for many years, and easily my favorite documentary filmmaker, Nancy Spielberg, whose brother Stephen has also made a few movies that you may have seen. I first met Nancy when she came to work here in Israel on her award-winning film Above and Beyond, which captures the heroic story of the first Israeli Air Force pilots, especially the foreign volunteers who literally saved the state in the first days of Israel's independence in 1948. Nancy also executive produced Elusive Justice, The Search for Nazi War Criminals, which aired on PBS. She served as a consultant on the Oscar-winning documentary film Chernobyl Heart, and executive produced On the Map, which tells the story, the iconic victory of Maccabi Tel Aviv against all odds and against the Russians, led by our mutual friend Tal Brody. So she is currently executive producing Who Will Write Our History? So welcome, Nancy.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here.
And let's get right into it. Nancy, please tell us about your newest movie. What's it about, and how did you get involved?
The new film is called Who Will Write Our History, and it actually is a book by Sam Kassow by the same name. Roberta Grossman, who directed Who Will Write Our History, directed Above and Beyond, and started to tell me all about this incredible story about a man named Emanuel Ringelblum, who was living in the Warsaw Ghetto, and Emanuel led a secret group of people. Knowing they would not survive, they decided to write their diaries and take reports on everything happening in the Warsaw Ghetto, and they buried all these documents in milk cans and tin boxes in the hopes that somebody would survive and that these documents would scream the truth to the world and the Germans would not be writing our history. So when Roberta, the more she talked about it, and it was a little bit of that buried secret archives, and of course in my head I'm thinking Indiana Jones, you know, I've got that whole Spielberg thing going on, and I said, I have to know more. And we knew so little about the Holocaust growing up that to me this was an eye-opener and a story not known. So
Alan, before we get your reaction, let's have a look, and quite literally a sneak preview of Who Will Write Our History.
Somewhere, years ago, there was a mother who knew that her son was the cleverest, the most talented, the most beautiful. And now the brightest and most beautiful child in the world lies in a strange street. And his name isn't even known.
We should have seen the worst coming. But we did not want to know the truth. We did not want to see it.
Does the world know about our suffering?
Emanuel Ringelblum understood that he had a story to tell, and it was the most important story he would ever have to tell.
Almost all the photography that we have was taken by the German propaganda unit.
Will the Germans write our history, or will we write our history?
Let the witness be our writing.
Their goal was to write the history of the war from the Jewish perspective. And there was no time to lose.
The worst scenario was in the process of happening.
Writing becomes the only recourse. That was the ultimate act of defiance.
You don't really need guns to fight. You could fight with paper and pen.
This is what made this collection of documents so absolutely unique.
One thing is clear to all of us. Our devotion and constant terror have not been in vain.
Among those taken away was Rabbi Ubabin,
Geli Sexton,
Israel Lichtenstein,
Leib Golden,
Abraham Levin,
Halina,
Emanuel Ringelblum.
Remember, my name is Nahum Gazivich.
I am writing this as a witness.
So Alan, what's your reaction?
Well, wow, is my reaction. You know, I have been following the Ringelblum episode for many years. When I was a young man, I read the Ringelblum diaries, and I was totally blown away by the determination of this historian to preserve history. And then there was a family connection. My family name is Ringel, and there are some in the family who think that the original name may have been the same as Ringelblum's, and maybe we're related. Who knows? The idea that these men, knowing that they were doomed, would decide that history was so important and that who tells the history is so important. And they buried these things, and I know the whole story, and it's just remarkable. Reading the episodes, reading about it, as I did even as a young man, inspired me. And so now many, many more millions of people will be able to see the film and be as inspired or more inspired than I was as a young man to look at the bravery. We hear so many false stories of the Holocaust, people going like sheep, not fighting back. The true story of the Holocaust has to be told by people who were there. And here we have an amazing account by people who were actually there and suffered and ultimately perished in the Holocaust itself. So thank you so much for producing this film. It's such an important part of our history.
Thank you, thank you. And it is, 3 people did survive from that secret group, and only 1 knew where these documents were buried. And they went back in this complete rubble of the ghetto and started digging. And it was trying to find a cellar within a cellar. And thank God that they found some of it, but still it was behind the Iron Curtain, and there was no money to really, open it up carefully because there was water damage. So it took quite a while for the world to start to learn a little, but most people don't know it. I mean, Alan's special. You really studied it. But this will be an opportunity to tell what they consider almost the Dead Sea Scrolls of the Holocaust.
So Nancy, could you tell us quickly, what are your upcoming plans for this movie?
Well, right now we're in festivals. We were just here in Jerusalem in the Jewish Film Festival last week, and Roberta Grossman was here as well. And then we are planning a theatrical run in New York and LA at the beginning of the year. But we have a massive global simultaneous screening on January 27th, which is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The anchor screening is at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. And we have close to 200 screenings around the globe, in countries all over America, but Estonia and Greece and Argentina and Australia and South Africa, and the list is growing.
And you'll be at the UN too?
I'll be, yes, we'll also be at the UN on January 30th. So, the point is to teach this story, to inspire people, mostly with such a rise in anti-Semitism and with all of the hate and divisiveness going around the world, a lot in the US too, we need messages like this.
Well, and Roberta, you've been my teacher as much as Alan was my teacher back at Harvard. And actually, there's something you probably don't know. Do you know that the first female fighter pilot in the Israeli Air Force is the granddaughter of one of the fighters from the Warsaw Ghetto? The next movie which we're going to talk about is Above and Beyond, and that, in a way, tells a story of my own story. I'll never forget the day that you and I, Nancy, met, because it was May 29th, the same day as that very first fighter mission of Israeli fighters ever, when they stopped an Israeli or an Egyptian column just 20 miles from Tel Aviv, which would have meant game over from the state just 2 weeks into our independence. So the person who flew and led that mission was Lou Lenart, who led that mission. And Lou came in 1948 after serving as a tough, crusty U.S. Marine pilot in World War II, Semper Fi. And, of course, Bob Magnus, a Jewish four-star general who had recently retired, and Steve Pressfield, the best-selling author, who all came. And Lou was my spiritual father because we both did basically the same thing. And he told his story to the young pilots of the 101 Squadron. So let's have a look at the clip from your amazing movie.
I grew up in an age of very virulent anti-Semitism.
I didn't deny my Judaism, but I wasn't happy about being Jewish. What changed me was knowing what Hitler did to the Jews.
I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do this.
It was desperation time in Palestine, and I said, look, I know there's going to be a war there, and I'm a fighter pilot, and I want to go there.
The 1948 war was the most significant of the Israeli-Arab wars.
It was a matter of life and death.
I was going to help the Jews out. I was going to help my people out. We weren't looking for trouble, but we were always looking for action. We were young, good-looking, had hair, we had a lot of testosterone, and we didn't want to waste it.
Maybe God spared us in World War II so that we could help the remnants of our people survive.
I was born to be here on that moment of history.
Alan, you want to talk about that a little?
Oh, wow, that's so fantastic. And it really hits me because I just finished a book that I'm publishing soon. It's called Defending Israel, a memoir of 70 years of defending Israel, beginning in 1948. And so this resonates for me so clearly. I remember so vividly the war of 1948. I was in a Hebrew-speaking camp called Camp Masad, and every day we heard bulletins of what was happening with the Air Force and with the troops on the ground. So this brings back to me so many vivid memories, some positive, some negative. One of my schoolmates in Borough Park volunteered to go in 48 and was killed. Perlstein, his name was, Moshe Perlstein. And so this film, when I saw it for the first time, just brought back so many vivid memories. And what you do, Ms. Spielberg, is bring back Jewish history and make it living history, particularly for young people who have been brought up in a different generation, who don't remember these heroic episodes and tragic episodes in our past. So thank you for bringing history to our current and future generations.
You know, I think for me this was a huge honor. First of all, I met these guys. I felt like each one of them was a family member and that I owed them a debt of gratitude, you know, because of what they did, not just fighting for the good old US of A, but also coming here, risking their lives again, you know, allowing Israel to become a state and survive gives me the privilege of walking down the streets in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. But to have their stories, and most of the guys in the film have passed away. Thankfully, Smokey Simon is still with us, and he's the head of the World Machal organization. So I really want this film to be something that gives Jewish pride to these younger kids that are not connected and that almost, you know, hide their Jewishness.
Well, let's talk about pride, because you've actually segued perfectly to my other favorite documentary of yours. It's about Maccabi Tel Aviv, the basketball team, beating the Russians, no less, and leading to the most famous phrase in modern Zionist history. No, it's not, if you wish it, it's not a dream by Herzl, but it is We Are on the Map in basketball and everything else by, again, our good friend Tal Brody. So let's watch this.
Basketball was the #1 topic in Israel.
When I got there, I was really surprised because inside me, I realized that we had a chance to do something.
Maccabi Tel Aviv playing for the European Cup Championship? Are you kidding me? Who are these guys?
For the Russian team, they knew that they had the best team in Europe that beat the American team in the Olympics.
Red Army Moscow had all of the great players from the national team. Maccabi carried the hopes of a nation. There are some things that are more important than sport.
It is easily one of the greatest sporting accomplishments ever.
All that excitement, all that pride, it just came out of my heart.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. It's wow.
Alan, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, well, you know, Tal is one of my favorite people in the world. You know, Jews and basketball are so connected. You know, I played in Madison Square Garden, and one of my opposing players was Ralphie Lipschitz, who became Ralph Lauren. So we were all totally devoted to basketball in Israel. And when the two were brought together in this victory, my God, what a day that was. I remember it as if it was yesterday. And thank you again for bringing it to our younger generation in films that will endure forever.
Well, Donnie Menken is the director of this, and he came to us with he had made a version for Israeli TV, and he brought it to Roberta and I and said, you know, what can we do? And we said, this is a huge film. This is not just for Israel. This is for America. This is a great message. And so to be able to, you know, explore again this American and Israelis coming together to succeed, and the great David and Goliath story, great Jewish pride. So we were thrilled. We were thrilled to be on board with this one. And you watch that trailer and you just get like, you know, all like, yes, we can do it.
Well, of course, Nancy, I hate to cut short. But we have another guest, and he is no less amazing, if you can believe that, than everything you've done. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
But we have another guest who is no less amazing and deals with a subject which is no less close to Alan's heart, making the case for Israel on America's campuses. Dr. Mark Banchik is a child psychologist from Connecticut who co-founded a national organization called Alums for Campus Fairness, the ACF. ACF confronts BDS on college campuses, mobilizing alumni as stakeholders in bringing colleges back to civility and to fairness. So, Mark, let's dive in. Tell us about your organization. What does it do? And what motivated you to start it?
So how did I get involved? I went to Vassar. 30 years later, after being a doctor, raising a family, living a life, right? Israel Apartheid Week comes to Vassar. Israel Apartheid Week. There's no Israel Celebration Week. There are no professors getting up celebrating Israel. It's a one-sided gig, and it's my college. So we started a group called FTI, Fairness to Israel, a group of college alumni from Vassar. We had 300 people right from the get-go. We covered Vassar. We looked at Students for Justice for Palestine. We looked at what they were doing on their Facebook pages. We looked at what they were doing in terms of bringing people to campus. We discovered that the head of Jewish studies at Vassar was not pro-Israel, and we were upset. Alumni have power. Alumni have influence. We send our children to these schools. We give money to these schools. We support these schools, and we are the brand of these schools. And so Vassar College had to deal with us. We're almost like an autoimmune disease in that we saw a problem at the school not being able to provide fairness, not to be able to provide civility to the college students and to the Jewish students. And therefore, we were effective. We then segued from being fairness to Israel to deciding that we had a national idea here, that we could expand to college campuses throughout the country. And we started a group called Alums for Campus Fairness. By the way, Professor Dershowitz, notice there's no name of Israel in our title. It's Alums for Campus Fairness, because we're not asking the university to be pro-Israel. We're asking Yale to be Yale. We're asking Vassar to be Vassar. We're asking UCLA to be UCLA. And what does that mean? We define it simply. We want our universities to be a marketplace of ideas, a place that can provide civility. And if you're going to reject hate speech, reject anti-Semitism. And so at Vassar College, we were very effective. We discovered SJP, Students for Justice for Palestine, had a Nazi propaganda poster on their social media. It went to where? The New York Daily News. We went on further, and we expanded our ACF presence to Oberlin College. At Oberlin College, we discovered that Professor Carrega, and I know that you know this story, that Professor Carrega had put on her Facebook page vile anti-Semitic material that she wouldn't take down.
So let's have Alan. I'd like your reaction to this.
Well, first, I think it's a great idea. Universities are more than the current student bodies. The current student bodies, by the way, even the current student bodies are more than the few dozen, or maybe sometimes few hundred, that scream and yell and call Israel apartheid and genocide. But university administrators tend to deal with the squeakiest wheels. And so they tend to be more responsive to the virulently and sometimes violently anti-Israel and sometimes anti-Semitic small groups than they are to the majority on the campus. But the university is not only the current student body, but the past student body, the future student body, the faculty and administrators and a range of other people. So it's very important that you have expanded from just the university listening to the students. It's crucially important to get alumni involved, to get future students involved, to get administrators, faculty, to get everybody involved, and most important, to get the majority involved.
There's one thing I know statistically is that more people give money to colleges and their colleges than they give to any Jewish charity. I'm talking about Jewish people. So I think what Mark has hit on here is you're motivating the stakeholders. So Mark, if you have one sentence which you want to ask for Professor Dershowitz and your fellow alumni, what would you ask?
I'd say one is that we have results. Vassar's clearing up its problem. I think Vassar's getting much better. A new president, it's moving forward. Oberlin has a new president. They're trying to move forward. So we've been effective. Professor Dershowitz, if you're interested, we'd love to have you involved. We're mobilized. We're on 31 college campuses. NYU, we're at Columbia, we're at Berkeley, we're at UCLA, we're at Dartmouth. We could use your help. And finally, to the audience, I would really like you to join us. To the audience, if you are giving money to a university or a college, if you're sending your child or your grandchildren to a university or a college, make sure they hear your voice. Alums for Campus Fairness. Join us now, campusfairness.org. Thank you.
Okay, one point I have to add, and that is I will help you on one condition, that the effort not be, and I'm sure it's not, to censor speakers on campus, but rather to broaden the diversity of points of view, not to stop Students for Justice for Palestine from spreading their lies and their filth and their hate, but rather to make sure that there's an open marketplace of ideas where all points of view can be heard, because censorship on university campuses always backfires, always fails. It's both immoral and illegal.
Well, absolutely. And Alan, I know that you're partnering, Mark's partnering with Stand With Us and other great organizations. So that's unfortunately all the time we have for today. If you'd like Professor Dershowitz to answer your questions, go to iltv.tv or our Facebook page and submit them. And we'll see you again next week.